War Eagle! This is the Tigers and Tide Auburn Football Podcast from SoutheasternFootball.com. Available on War Eagle Sports Radio, the Sporto channel, bringing you all Auburn Tigers all the time. Remember to download the War Eagle Sports Radio free iOS app and follow their channel on Twitter at War Eagle Radio. Here are your hosts, Brett Mason and Jamie Thomas.
Broadcasting from our respective Alabama and Auburn bunkers in Southeast Alabama, you have two happy people for the podcast today. I am Brett Mason, War Eagle, along with my co-host Jamie Thomas.
Roll Tide, buddy.
Hello to everybody listening on our free iOS and Android apps. Are free on the App Store. Just search for Tigers and Tide. You get the podcast immediately when we release them. You don't have to go searching for it. Of course, you can also subscribe. Everybody that's listening on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and YouTube, we're happy to have you here as well. And, of course, we're easy to find on any of those platforms just by searching for Tigers and Tide. And we're both happy campers today. I think you probably are a tad happier than I am.
You would think, wouldn't you?
Well, I would think, yes. You know, I'm not quite sure Alabama looked like a championship team this weekend, but they sure looked more like one than Auburn did. I can tell you that. So, obviously, you have a right to be a little bit happier. So we're going to jump into the game, talk about what we saw with the offense, talk about what we saw with the defense, things like that, recap the game, and maybe take a look at what we should be looking at going forward. I thought we'd start the podcast today with a few interesting notes from the weekend. Feel free to chime in on ones you want to and just not say anything on the ones you don't. We'll move right through them.
All right.
SEC ran the table. Of course, LSU game's canceled, so that don't count. And then Vandy loses in an embarrassing fashion. Thanks a lot, Vanderbilt.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
How good or bad is LSU? It's frustrating for me as an Auburn fan because we have to face them week 3, and I didn't really get to see anything by them. You know, next week will be my first chance to check them out, and they'll be taking on Mississippi State. So at least they'll be playing a better quality opponent. Maybe we'll learn more next week. The BYU Hail Mary pass to beat Nebraska with 1 second left on the clock was pretty dramatic. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, that was outstanding.
I love Hail Mary passes as long as my team isn't involved. Because those are scary.
Well, how many times did CBS show that stupid Nick Marshall to Ricardo Lewis Hail Mary yesterday?
Moving right along, Jamie Thomas lost money because Stanford got upset.
Yeah, that's true. Stanford let me down. I guess if anybody was going to make me look like an idiot, it had to be them, huh?
Pac-12 in general was just ridiculous. You had 2 Pac-12 teams lose to Mountain West teams. Not just Mountain West teams, but subpar Mountain West teams. Stanford could only score 2 field goals against Northwestern. Washington State lost to a middle-of-the-pack FCS team in an embarrassing fashion. It just wasn't good for them. I mean, some of the upper tiers, you know, they looked okay, but
yeah, I thought UCLA looked pretty good. I think Northwestern, you know, they about every 4 or 5 years they have a pretty good football team. So maybe not that bad of a deal for Stanford. You know, they could still recover. They've got an excellent football coach. They could still win the Pac-12. But yeah, you're right. It's not looking good for them at all. Even Oregon didn't look that great.
The most entertaining video of the weekend was the K-State band halftime show, which appeared to show a mascot performing unsavory acts. The band director claimed that it was a mascot. That was the mascot battling the Starship Enterprise.
Yeah.
I can promise you that is not what it looked like.
It's definitely not what it looks like. You're going to have to Google that one. I'm really not going to comment on that just in case there are any kids listening to this show.
And in the Keep It Classy Gainesville segment, New Mexico not only gets beat up in the swamp, then they have their bus robbed as well.
Classy and Gainesville. Well, that's 2 words you don't hear in a sentence very often.
Well, we're going to be talking about the Auburn versus Louisville game in some details. More specifically, we'll be running down thoughts about the offense and thoughts about the defense. Jamie Thomas and myself always share notes with each other before the show. And Jamie Thomas has one note about the Auburn game. One note. Apparently, you took none of this project seriously.
I mean, I figured you had everything covered. I mean, you stated all of the obvious. I just said what everybody else was thinking.
Come on, man. Look, this is what gets me about, and it's not just when it's Auburn, it's when it's other teams too. When a team is driving at the end, they don't have a lot of time and they're looking to score, but all they're looking to do is tie the game. Like if they score, they're not going to win. They're just going to tie. And then everybody feels like they got cheated somehow. It's different than when if they could have made a field goal, they would have won. They would have had to have had a touchdown and had a 2-point attempt to win. So they weren't robbed. Granted, ain't no doubting the guy is an idiot. He said, though, in the post-game conference that the referee told him that they were going to start the clock back. I don't know if that's true or not. I just heard what the referee said on the mic, and that's not.
Yeah, the referee had just said it was they would be stopping the clock.
Yeah, but he said in his post game that the referee came over and told him personally they would be restarting the clock. So I don't know. It seems stupid either way. Look, I'm just happy to get out of there. There was some pleasant things for Auburn, and there was some things that were ugly. And then I think we were also victim of the preseason hype machine. At least Jeremy Johnson was. Nevertheless, I think one thing was really interesting, Jamie, and in his post game, he said he was confident, Jeremy Johnson. It was first game jitters. He's going to settle in and be fine. But now if in his mind, not what he's saying, but what he's thinking, if he don't believe that, he may go back to some kind of previous scheme. But I think a big telling difference between what he's going to try to do this year and what we saw the past 2 years. They only ran 62 plays, and they only had 327 yards of offense. I mean, Malzahn is shooting for 75 plays always. Like, that's like a minimum for him. 70, 75. He wants to hit 80 if he can. So they didn't run as many plays. The hurry-up definitely was not there very often. The 327 yards of offense is mind-blowing.
Yeah, they usually have that in the first half.
There definitely was a difference in the offense. There wasn't as much eye candy with tons of different movements and weird alignments and strange formations. There wasn't quite as much of that. The zone read wasn't there. It was just a much different offense, and it seems like they had bought into the hype that Jeremy Johnson was going to be this NFL-style passer. To some degree, it seems like that's the way they set the offense up, and then they got out there and it didn't turn out that way. I mean,
I don't think it's time for Auburn fans to start panicking yet. It was the first game. I think it was a situation where maybe Auburn was only showing half the playbook. I think they felt, they had a huge advantage over Louisville, which they should have. They should have won that game outright because, Louisville played horrible.
And they were till the third quarter. I mean, it was like 31-10 in the third quarter. It was.
Yeah, but we've seen that out of Gus more than once before. He gets a little bit of a lead and then he just kind of backs off. Had he kept the foot on the throttle just a little bit, I think maybe we would have seen Auburn, pull away from that game.
Well, to me, his interceptions are a good news, bad news kind of thing, and it depends on how you want to look at it. I'm looking at it as good news. He is not a poor passer. He did not pass poorly. He just made passes he never should have made. And if you can coach that out of him, and you should be able to when he feels more comfortable. And it seems like he gets it. In the post game, they asked him, and he said he was trying to force things he shouldn't have forced. And they asked him, what lesson did you learn? And he said, I learned to take what the defense gives me. Now, if he learned that, he's going to be fine. Tell you who I loved, man. Well, there's a few people I love, but on offense, I am sold out 100% in love with Peyton Barber, man. This dude put the team on his back in the second half. Him and Petrino are the two reasons that Auburn won this game. They are. I mean, he ran the clock down. They couldn't stop him. He put the team on his back and said, just keep giving me the ball, and I'm just going to keep picking up yards. He was just a beast. And even when he wasn't running, he picked up his blocking assignments good, which is something you want to see out of a running back. He had one pass, 15-yard reception, which is good. I mean, there was nothing I didn't like about Peyton Barber, man.
Saw some intensity out of him that I really didn't see out of Rock Thomas. I saw some downhill running out of him that I didn't see out of Rock Thomas. And from what I understand, Rock left the game injured, and I think Jovan had a little bit of an injury. So really, there wasn't anybody left to put the game on the line with other than Peyton Barber. He really stepped up. Auburn fans should be really happy about that.
Well, I'll tell you a good sign of how much Gus Malzahn loves him. He brought him out. He was the only guy out there with Gus Malzahn for the post-game press conference. It was him and Barber sitting there in front of the press. That could be because he was one of the highlights of the game, or it could be because Gus is happy he found his guy. I wonder, would Peyton Barber had his opportunity to shine had Rock Thomas and Joan Robinson not got injured. I really wonder about that. I wonder how many carries he would have got.
Yeah, I think he would have gotten the game, maybe not as early as he did, and maybe not have given the chance to get that momentum going that he had. I don't know. It's hard to tell. It makes you wonder what Gus and Lashley and those guys missed during fall camp where he was at the starter to begin with.
Well, and to be fair, there's a little bit of a difference between running between the tackles and hitting people in the face in the second half than there is the first half. I mean, he got a little bit of an advantage. He was fresh. They were tired. Rock Thomas was running against a fresh defense. So it's not exactly apples to apples. But Rock Thomas looked like what a lot of people have claimed he is, and that's a finesse running back. He ain't going to be able to just smash anybody, and that's the way it looked. And times you put a guy like that in, but I think you put him in there on the jet sweep or something. He's not the guy you're going to depend on for hard yards all the time. In the receiving core, Ricardo Lewis did everything he was asked to do, I thought. He did those jet sweeps. He got important yards. He was doing good as a receiver downfield. I think he looked as good or better than he did last year, which is good news. Let me jump down to Duke Williams because I got this at the end of my notes. But I was a little surprised that Duke Williams wasn't involved in this game more, especially when it became close at the end. And I guess it's because they just didn't want Jeremy passing the ball, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's the big part of it. I think they said, they went to Duke only 5 times during the game. Is that right?
5 times, man. 5 times in all. This dude would be, I don't know what he is in the country. It's hard to say. But, the guy's up there. He's one of the better receivers you're going to find. And it actually makes it easier when you have a quarterback who's struggling. At least if you get it near Duke, Duke's probably going to come down with it. That's the guy I would want to take my chances with. Anyway, I don't know if it means anything or not. I know Duke was getting doubled, and that's similar to the Amari situation last year with Alabama. He's a guy that's going to get doubled a lot. That could have been part of it. They could have just been avoiding for that reason. I don't know. I thought it was interesting. The offensive line did not look as good as I thought they were going to look, Jamie. I really thought those guys were going to look a lot more solid. But the 5 holding calls in the game, to me, is pretty good evidence that they were losing the battle at the line of scrimmage a lot, and they were having to do whatever it took to keep people out of Jeremy Johnson's grill. So that concerns me a little bit.
I agree with that, but what I saw out of Louisville's defensive line was some speed. And a lot of times speed is harder to block than someone that matches up with you, pound for pound, that can blow you off the football. I've been there. When I played football, I had to block some guys that were, half my size and 3 times as fast as I was. And a lot of times you get beat a whole lot more than you succeed.
Yeah, when you're on the edge out, it's tough because they can get around you and you've got a lot of help. No doubt. And I'm not super stressed. I just thought they would look better. The stat that I like that gives me some hope is there were no sacks. So in spite of the fact we had some holding penalties, Jeremy Johnson never went down one time the whole game, and there were only 3 tackles for a loss. So I think there's some good things to look at that. Overall, though, the offensive effort, with the exception of Peyton Barber, I just really had to, especially on Gus Malzahn's standards. We're talking about he's a 500-yard-a-game guy, and at 327, it wasn't fantastic. Nevertheless, we'll talk about the defense coming up in just a second, but first remind you that our show is brought to you by DraftKings. Fantasy sports are winning huge cash prizes every day at DraftKings.com, America's favorite place to play daily fantasy sports. Daily fantasy, look, no season-long commitments. You play whenever you want. You can skip a week, skip 2 weeks, whatever. Pick the sport you want to play, draft your team, and it's like a new season every time you play, so you're never stuck with the same players all year long. Over $1 billion will be won at DraftKings.com this year, and you could be the next one to win big, so go to DraftKings.com now and enter promo code Tigers and Tide to play for free. That's all one word, Tigers and Tide, for your free entry now at DraftKings.com. I plan on winning my share of the $1 billion this year.
Hey, if it's free, why wouldn't you play?
Yeah, it beats all the money I lost to the bookie this weekend. I'm going to tell you that right now. Let's talk about the Auburn defense, man. That one thing they did, and they did it pretty well, especially in the first half, was no doubt. They brought the pressure back. They were in the backfield more than Louisville, it seemed, most of the time, especially that first quarter, first half. And double, especially when Carl Lawson was in there. Man, Carl Lawson is the real deal. I don't know if he can stay healthy. I'm now starting to worry if he's just one of those injury-prone guys. God, I hope not.
Did he play the second half at all?
No.
Did they ever say what the injury was? Because it looked like it was maybe either a hamstring.
Hip flexor, they said.
Hip flexor.
And they kept him out of caution, they said. They thought he could have come in if he wanted to, but the way things were going in that second half, I don't think you're keeping your best defensive guy out of safety. I think it's possible it's more serious, but they never really got into it. So honestly, just don't know, Jamie. But hip flexor, it's something you can come back from. It's not a big deal. Hopefully he's going to be fine. But I'm going to tell you something. That dude is on fire. He plays like a rabid dog, man. He's fun to watch. I wish I had a camera just on him during the game. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In spite of all that, they did give up some big plays. They moved into a bend but don't break kind of thing at times, especially after Lawson was out, to see that happen. And then in the second half, man, and this is hard for any team, but that freshman quarterback they put in there, he was quick and fast and agile, and they could not account for him at all. Yeah. I mean, he pretty much did whatever he wanted. And Malzahn said in the post game that it was a big deal when they lost Carl Lawson. That scares me a little bit, man. I hate to know that the defensive output is based on one guy. And if he's in there, we're going to be great. And if he's not in there, we're going to be average.
Well, it's something we've talked about, since the first podcast this year. As far as the ones go on, the Auburn defense, they're as good as any defense in the country, talent-wise. Carl Lawson's definitely probably, one of the best defensive ends in the game. But when you get down to those 2s and 3s, it's like you saw, and there was nobody there to contain that freshman quarterback. So he had a field day. They didn't have anybody that could keep up with him. I think as Auburn fans, you got to be happy with what you see on defense, but you got to understand there's help on the way next year too.
Yeah, I mean, it'll definitely get better, but we're Auburn fans and we love football and we want to win a championship this year, Jamie.
Well,
not next year. But anyway, look, Montravius Adams is no slouch, man. 7 tackles, 1 half for a loss, and he had a sack. He basically earned his entire paycheck in the Cardinal backfield. He was a beast. I mean, he was by far, I think, the second best player on the defense. But Trey Matthews...
Casanova McKenzie had a pretty good game, too.
Yeah, he did. And he had 4 tackles, 2 assists, I think. So he was definitely flying around, getting in on the action. He was a solid player last year, and will only get better this year, too. I'm looking forward to good things from Cass. And I think the whole front 7 was pretty much what we expected. I don't think I was surprised or many other Auburn fans were surprised. I think we got what we paid for there, which is good news to me. The secondary, Trey Matthews stepped up, man. He kicked the game off right. Probably without that, we would have lost the game without that big momentum interception at the beginning.
Any word on his injury?
No, and you know what? I read 2 conflicting reports. I read a report earlier this morning that he came back and played in that last series. But now I don't think that's true. I don't think he ever.
I don't remember seeing him.
That was the Montgomery Ledger or something said that he came back and played in that last series. If you watch that injury, it was very weird looking. It's kind of like it doesn't look like it was an impact thing. Maybe he pulled something. It was very weird how he got injured there. Nevertheless, overall, man, the script was definitely flipped for this game. The defense won the game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Even given the fact that they won the game, though, man, they got a long way to go. They gave up 405 total yards. 167 of those were passing. They had no answer for a scrambling quarterback. Obviously, that probably would have been better if Carl Lawson had played the whole game. But I think hands down, all reports about him are true. Lived up to expectations as long as he was in there. Is that going to continue all season? I think we'll have to wait 2 or 3 games. I think Jeremy Johnson could be all right. I hope Carl Lawson's healthy, and hopefully maybe we found a running back, man. I really liked what I saw out of Peyton Barber. That makes me excited. Hey, a little quick reminder, our broadcast is brought to you by Blueberry Podcast Hosting and Services. If you were listening just now to this show and thought, God, I could do so much better than Brett and Jamie, for only $12 you can start your own podcast, and it's actually easier than that. Just produce, post, and publish, and you can try it for a month for free. You can't beat free. Southeasternfootball.com/free month to start podcasting right now. That's Southeasternfootball.com/free month, and use Tigers and Tide at checkout. Tigers and Tide at checkout, and you can try your hand at podcasting. And if you do that, please send us a link to it and so we can listen to it and hear what good podcasting sounds like.
Can't be much worse than this show.
We'll wrap it up by looking ahead to a couple of things. First of all, we'll look ahead to this coming up weekend. Jacksonville State is on the schedule. This should be a great scrimmage for Auburn. Hopefully, we'll be able to work out the many issues. Hopefully, guys like Carl Lawson, Trey Matthews, if they have injuries that can continue to get better with time, it'll be a chance for those guys to get back to 100%. I think a lot of good things could happen because, Lord help us all, LSU is next. So, Auburn has 1 week, man. I think Auburn has 1 week to get ready. And that being said, I really am glad. I don't know how you feel about it with your Crimson Tide and me with Auburn, but I like the test the first game of the season. I think you find out what you got. I think if we had played Jacksonville State first game of the season, I don't think we would know what we had.
Yeah, well, you find out what you have, and then, if you're going to play these, the cupcakes like Jack State and Middle Tennessee like Bama has, you know what you have to work on. So you find out what you have, and then you have a game that a chance to improve before those big conference games start.
And finally, a reminder for you, if you did play in our Pick'em contest, we will be announcing a winner on the Thursday show. We couldn't do it on this show because, of course, there's the Monday night game with Ohio State. So we have a bunch of guys tied at the top. The only difference between them is the tie-breaking questions. So I don't know if anybody would have picked against Ohio State or not. We'll just have to wait and see. So we'll have the winner of that. Somebody is going to win a prize this week. And look, if you're sitting there going, well, dang, I'd like to have won a prize. It's free to enter our Pick'em contest. Just go to southeasternfootball.com/picks, southeasternfootball.com/picks, and all the info for you to enter is free, and you can get in on it next week. Doesn't matter that you missed week 1. It's not a big deal. We're still going to do prizes every week. And I must say that I beat Jamie Thomas in the Pick'em this week.
This week's grand prize is an autographed picture of Brett Mason.
Get out of here, man. It's going to be a good prize. I personally guarantee it, or I will go whack Jamie upside the head with a...
How about an autographed picture of Elizabeth Sturdivant?
Well, now I'd take that.
Yeah.
We didn't clear that through Elizabeth, so I don't think anybody should get their hopes up.
Well, we're going to talk to her pretty soon, so we'll get that taken care of.
Well, speaking of her, she'll be on the Thursday show as well. She'll have her picks and long shots and all that stuff for you to hit your bookie up with on Thursday. So that'll be a big show. So in the meantime, we appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you on Thursday's show. War Eagle, buddy.
Roll Tide.
Don't forget to follow us at Tigers and Tide 1 on Twitter and Facebook.com/Tigers and Tide. Also, be sure to follow War Eagle Sports Radio at War Eagle Radio for the latest on Auburn Tigers sports. Thanks for listening to the Auburn Football Podcast from SoutheasternFootball.com on War Eagle Sports Radio of the Sporto channel. Download our free iOS app. Just search for Tigers and Tide in the App Store. And subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. Just search for Tigers and Tide. And for the latest SEC news, log on to SoutheasternFootball.com.